In today's NFL, every team would love nothing more than to have a quarterback with size, arm strength, and mobility as the starting point for the physical tools. If you can get a quarterback that's 6'4", 6'5", 225, 230 pounds with a strong arm and the ability to extend plays with his feet as a passer and also pick up yardage as a ball carrier, you feel like you've got something. You've got a foundation to work with, and you try to figure out the rest later. And one of the quarterbacks that checks off all three of those boxes in a big way for me in this 2016 NFL draft class is Jacoby Brissett, the 6'4", 230-pound redshirt senior from North Carolina State who started his college career at Florida before ultimately transferring, biding his time, and then getting his opportunity in 2014 to show what he could do. When I watch Jacoby Brissett, I'm actually surprised that people aren't higher on him. And I'm surprised that he doesn't get more buzz as a prospect that he frankly deserves, and I think he should get. And I think if I was talking about a guy that was potentially underrated in terms of this year's quarterback class for the draft, I think Brissett might be that guy. So let's talk about him a little bit. In terms of his strengths, like I mentioned, size, 6'4", 230 pounds. He's built like a man. And he's tall enough, and he's got that size that teams love. He's got arm strength. He can make all the required NFL throws. I saw it on film the past 2 years. There's no question about it. He's also a solid athlete who has the ability to extend plays on his feet, who has the ability to not just run to run, but he can run to throw and then also run to run as well, which I think is a really impressive trait that not all mobile quarterbacks have. A lot of mobile quarterbacks or athletic quarterbacks have the tendency to run to only run. Once that first read is gone, they will run to run, and they will not extend plays in the passing game. They can become a little bit easier to defend. Well, Brissett, he's a guy that's shown me the ability to run, but also run to extend the pass play and to try and make something happen that wasn't originally there. And I really like that improvisational ability of him. A guy that's pretty good throwing on the move to both sides. There's some guys in this draft that are pretty good, on the move throwing to one side. I look at Hackenberg. He would surprise you with how good he is throwing on the move to the right. But once you're asking him to throw to the left and square up his body and square up his shoulders that way, not so much. But Brissett, he can do that. He could run to roll out to both sides and throw almost equally as well on the move, in my opinion. A guy that stands pretty tough in the pocket. I mean, this is a guy that took some big shots and was able to stay in the game. This was a guy that didn't seem afraid of getting hit, and you like that out of a quarterback. In general, I liked his pocket awareness. I thought he had a pretty good nose for feeling at least where the blitz was coming from and where the pass rush was coming from at times, trying to step up and move around within that pocket before instantly just breaking contain, although other times he could have maybe stood taller in the pocket, stayed put, or moved a little bit without always having to break the contain of the pocket. I think his short to intermediate accuracy is pretty solid enough for the NFL level. Another thing I like about him, and this could in part tie into one of the flaws of his game that I'll talk about in a moment, but I do like his nose for understanding when something isn't there, even when he's trying to make a big play happen. He will throw the football away. He doesn't tend to put the ball at risk a lot in terms of trying to make an ill-advised throw into double coverage or just trying to make a big play happen. Sometimes he will take what the defense gives him or doesn't give him, and then he will throw the ball into the sidelines. He will throw the ball up into the third row of the bleachers. And sometimes that's the best play a quarterback can make. You're not taking a momentum-changing sack. You're not creating the possibility for a interception or a turnover. You're just moving on to the next play, or you're keeping the ball for your offense so that way you can hand it over to the punter and you can change field position. I like that football IQ about his game in the sense that he's not afraid to admit, hey, the play is over. Even when he tries to extend it and make something happen that isn't initially there, by trying to extend it, he will throw the ball into the seats. He will throw the ball out of bounds. But in some ways that's a good thing. In some ways that's a bad thing. And when I get to the question marks I have about his game and his weaknesses, the first major weakness you could say or question about him is that he holds onto the ball way too damn long. And part of that could be the fact that he had a lack of real solid supporting cast around him at NC State the past couple of years, and that's true. Part of that could be the fact that he was trying to make things happen. And again, that's true, and I don't necessarily begrudge him for that. But sometimes he threw the football away way too late when maybe something easier was there earlier, maybe the better decision would have been to just, fall down or to try and pick up 3 yards on his feet. He's trying to scramble around. He's trying to move around in the pocket. He's trying to make something big happen, and he's holding onto the ball. So he's taking too many unnecessary hits. He's taking sacks that maybe he doesn't need to take. And when you talk about a guy that sometimes doesn't always do the best job of securing the ball with both hands in the pocket and where he holds it isn't always the best, you could see a guy that could potentially be at the quarterback position a bit fumble prone at the NFL level, especially if you're not careful. Sometimes where I've talked about already with his pocket toughness and his pocket awareness, I think sometimes his poise is a little bit questionable in terms of he can get a little bit of happy feet. And like I talked about, at times he demonstrates the understanding to move side to side or up or back or around or peeling out of the pocket. But there are times especially where he could stand in the pocket, but instead he's willing to bolt out of the pocket immediately. He'll still try to extend the play as a passer, but he's still bolting out of the pocket, potentially affecting his pass protection, changing the dynamics of the play, shortening the field because he's rolling to one side or the other when he just doesn't have to. In terms of his accuracy, I think his down the field accuracy, but particularly in the deep passing game, once you get past 15 yards, is definitely leaving something to be desired. Even his short to intermediate accuracy in a 5, 10, 15-yard throwing window, while he gets it into the general range and catch radius of his targets, of his wide receivers, his tight ends, and running backs, his ball placement can leave something to be desired. There are times where he would throw the ball, it'd get to the guy, but it's at his feet. Or it'd get to the guy, but it was 2 feet over his head. It would be right there, but instead of leading the guy, he would throw it behind him. Or when he needed to lead him down and low, he went up and high. Or when he needed to go up and high, it was in the chest, or it was high and away, or low and away. And that ball placement can be significantly important at the NFL level, and it's something he's going to have to work on. As well as, I think he's a guy that can go through his progressions well. I think his field vision is a little bit underrated. Now, at times, he was facing a lot of pressure at NC State, so a lot of times he only had time for one read, frankly, before he had to bail out of the pocket. But there were other times where, with his field vision, he did have the time to go through, and it sometimes would seem like to me he would see it, but he didn't always trust what he saw. So his quick decision-making does leave a little bit something to be desired. I would like to see him be a guy that sees something or anticipates something in particular and throws to a spot without necessarily having to wait to see the guy open before he actually throws it. Because in the NFL, at times, you're going to have to make those throws where you anticipate where a guy is going. You're going to have to anticipate by throwing to a spot. You're going to have to throw them open and trust that the receiver could get there. And I'm not sure Brissett has that in his skill set yet because he didn't really have the talent, I think, at NC State to get that out of him. In terms of an NFL comparison for me, as I watch him, maybe somebody like a Tyrod Taylor. Coming out of Virginia Tech, I don't think Taylor was nearly as polished of an overall prospect as a Brissett is. But some of the weaknesses are very similar. Guys with size, arm strength, mobility, they can throw on the move, tough guys, solid short to intermediate accuracy. In general, didn't put the ball at risk a lot in terms of as a passer. Pretty good managers of the game in that way. But at times could try to make too much happen, a little too eager at times to bail out of the pocket. Their down the field accuracy was questionable. Ball placement was questionable. I look at Brissett and I see some elements of Tyrod Taylor. Now, the interesting thing with Tyrod Taylor, it took him some time to develop. But you saw in 2015 a solid starting quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. They're much better off as an organization now because they have Tyrod Taylor as their starting quarterback. And I look at Jacoby Brissett, and I see some of those similar traits. Now, granted, he's already a redshirt senior, so he's already 23, soon to be 24. But this is a guy that has a couple of years of starting experience, a guy with a nice physical tools to work with, a nice physical skill set, who seems to have a decent mind for the game, a tough guy who has the ability to make plays happen with both his arm and his feet. For my money, in my opinion, I think he's the number 4 quarterback prospect in the 2016 NFL Draft. Now, I don't anticipate him being the 4th quarterback off the board. And frankly, I don't anticipate him necessarily even being drafted by round number 4. But when I look, once I get past Wentz and Goff and then Lynch down here, and I'm looking at these other guys, to me it's all one big crapshoot. So many people are going to have so many different guys rated as the 4th and 5th best quarterbacks in this draft, in my opinion. And when I look at Brissett, I think he's been underrated, and I think people are sleeping on him as a prospect. And I think that teams will sleep on him as well, and it's a shame because to me he is a late day 2, early day 3 prospect where he might get chosen more in mid to late day 3 if he even gets drafted at all. He should be, though, because I think he is more polished as a prospect than people maybe want to think or have been led to believe. So for my money, again, Brissett is the number 4 quarterback in the 2016 NFL draft. But that's just my opinion. So what does that mean?